Hi, I'm Aaron Mesh with Willamette Week, and I'm speaking to Eric Ward, the Executive Director of the Western State Center. Eric is based here in Portland, Oregon, and as much as anyone in the city has been tracking the rise of right-wing extremism, the anti-fascist response to that, the street violence that has plagued this city, some of it very orchestrated in its behaviors, and the real danger that that poses for a functioning democracy, both locally and nationally. Eric, I want to start by just talking about this particular moment with the death of Aaron Danielson 2 days ago. You just said to me, even before we turned the record button on, that there is a real danger here, and this is a very serious moment for Portland. Can you explain why?
Yeah. Oregon, but particularly Portland, has become a proxy for a re-election campaign, for alt-right and white nationalist paramilitaries and vigilantes who want to make an ideological point or to live out their fantasy of racial war. We have a strong protest culture here in Portland, one that is politically left. It is a protest movement that has always had a small portion that has engaged in direct action that at least has included property vandalism at a time. And so when you look at this perfect storm, in many ways, what is happening is that Portland has become the world's version in the United States of Lebanon, right? Of Beirut. It is being used by those who have different agendas that have nothing to do with equity in Portland, that has nothing to do with opportunity or safety in our community. And if we don't respond, and if we don't respond seriously and in a unified fashion, we are going to watch Portland, Oregon get torn apart. And I don't know how any more serious to be with people about where this moment is. I've been talking about it for over 3 years, so have many others. We are no longer talking about what's coming. It is now what is here. It is small, it is contained, but the potential for large-scale violence is very real right now.
Like there, if I can play devil's advocate, the devil's advocate position here would be that a violent leftist shot and killed someone who was protesting in the city of Portland, and yeah, they're protesting on behalf of an unpopular political candidate here, but that person was not, to our knowledge, threatening anyone. What's wrong with the position that really the problem here is that there are violent leftists in the streets of Portland?
There are far too many people who rely on physical violence in this time, and I don't think it is useful. I don't think it honors the goals of the Black Lives Matters movement. I don't think it has changed anything. It hasn't created that violence, hasn't created jobs. But we should be clear, right? The majority of violence in Portland, Oregon has been pretty limited property destruction. There have been continuous protests in Portland, Oregon, as you know, for nearly 100 days. And the only time there was an actual riot on the streets of Portland, Oregon, right, was on the first night until the last 2 weeks when right-wing paramilitary forces have shown up. Civil protesters have largely been nonviolent. There has largely been a sense of anger, but not huge scale, organized physical violence. But it does exist. And, you know, I want to be clear, right? I'm angry that this life was taken. I, I'm also angry about every one of the lives that has been taken over the 98 days since George Floyd, the two individuals shot down in the streets in Wisconsin, individuals who've been shot in Kentucky, law enforcement officers who were killed by Boogaloo Boys, right? We should be angry about all of those lives, regardless of political ideology. There is a serious intervention that needs to happen in Portland, Oregon, one that defends democratic practice, one that protects freedom of assembly, right? One that protects freedom of speech. And I expect, as any person living in Portland should expect, that at all times that the Portland Police Bureau, right, is taking the higher ground, not acting as another gang on the street that's fulfilling its own vendetta. We have enough of those formations on the streets of Oregon. We need someone to be the responsible adult. And the failure of the Portland Police Department to be the responsible adult has added to this environment that is now combusting on the streets of Portland.
So I guess my question then would be, is there still any time?
There is still time. But in order to have that time and to make that time, all formations right now need to take themselves seriously. Those who are countering far-right elements in our community need to rein in and abstain from physical violence. This is critically important. Any use of physical violence at this point will provide an excuse for Donald Trump to continue to use our community as a proxy. Any use of physical violence distracts from the real violence that Black folks are facing every day in Portland, not just physical violence, but economic violence and social violence. The unwillingness to engage in nonviolence and non-physical assaults right now only provides Donald Trump with the electoral campaign that he seeks. We need to act with discipline in this moment, and we need to restrain ourselves from engaging in physical violence. For those in the center of Portland and consider themselves middle America, they need to speak out, right? They need to begin saying things. And for city leadership, particularly the current mayor and everyone else who is running for mayor, it is time for those individuals to align themselves. There needs to be a joint conference, right, attended by the current mayor and the two candidates who are running for mayor. They need to speak in one voice. They can disagree on the 999 things that they want to disagree on. But they need to vocally and publicly agree on that it's time for our community to come together and manage this white nationalist threat in our community, one that is being stoked by the President of the United States, to simply say, we will not allow Portland to be used as a proxy war for Trumpism.